Okay. Stand by. Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, and subject up for discussion is the real estate development strategy.
Yeah, and Genevieve, could you go ahead and pull that up, please?
Yeah, I'm stuck in a highlighter pen tool. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second.
That's okay. So while she's getting that up, over the past few years, we've come to you with a number of different development options and opportunities, and have gone through multiple processes with real estate investment strategy, the lease implementation, and we've sort of slowly, moved different opportunities for development forward. And this is just the next step in that process. So with the real estate investment strategy, we started off by comparing properties with a matrix. You may remember it was sort of a red light, green light, yellow light matrix. Instead of doing that this year, we thought that this format may be a little bit easier for you. So we're just going to go through the different opportunities as we see them right now and walk through each one and basically ask your opinion on whether or not you'd like us to move forward to the next step. None of this is a definitive, yes, we're going to do this project. It's just moving us to the next step towards development. So Genevieve, if you could scroll up or scroll down just a little bit to the, yeah, right there. So again, you've seen these properties before. The Lower Mill, we have retained 2 lots, and 2 of them are still for sale. The large lot has some wetland mitigation that still needs to be done. We did retain Livermore Architecture to give us a 10% design drawing for 2 buildings, maximizing the space on both of those lots. And we also got 2 cost estimates. So that cost estimate of $300 a foot went down considerably with our second estimator, who's Furlow out of Portland, who's very has a lot of experience and does this all the time. So those numbers have gotten a little bit better. At the airport, Genevieve, if you could pull up the aerial of the airport, I can sort of speak to Commissioner Everett's comment about making sure we are clarified on which hangar project is what. So essentially there's 2 hangar projects going on at the airport potentially. One of them is a commercial hangar, which is a large hangar that would be used for business purposes. Potentially would store aircraft, but really a large hangar that would be located just to the east, yep, right there. And as part of the building pad was part of the Connect 6 project. We don't have an aerial of that completed project, but that building would essentially go right there just to the west of Jeanette Road facing north and south. That's a large building, somewhere between 25,000 and 30,000 square feet, up to 4 bays, and could host aviation related businesses, which means 50% or greater of their revenue has to come from aviation. So already in contact with a number of people who are interested, and we have a potential pre-lease for 12,000 square feet of that building already. There's not very much space for those folks, and when they can locate on the airport, it gives them some synergy with some of their testing. And then if we move over to the east side of the airport, just to the west of Orchard Road there, you see that sort of long strip, yep, right there. So that property is outlined in our master plan as one of the only places where we can fit additional T hangars, but it's also large enough to potentially fit some box hangars. There's a few options here, the port that we'll get into in a little bit later, but I just wanted you to see the differences in these 2. The box hangars and T hangars are really for private individual use. They're smaller hangars, and their sole purpose, as Commissioner Everett said earlier, is to store aircraft. So again, commercial for businesses on the west side of the airport, and then private aircraft storage on the east side of the airport. Any questions on the differences between those two before we move on? No, okay. Can you go back to the memo, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the next one then is the Barman property, the only commercial lot just south of Lot 1 on the waterfront. And again, you know, the staff has worked through the traffic analysis for this. And an RFI has been started. Michael's been working on that. And so just gonna want some clarity on if you want us to move forward with that opportunity. Industrial land acquisition, again, that effort towards exit 62 purchase was unsuccessful. And then Lot 1, there's an evaluation of some phasing alternatives here that the port could keep chugging forward on infrastructure development on Lot 1. So with that, let's go ahead and move down to the first property, and we can just start going through these unless you have a couple more questions. Nope, okay. So Lower Mill has 2 shovel-ready lots. Go ahead and scroll up just a little bit, Genevieve, so we can see. Yeah, right there. Oh, down a little bit so we can see the, yeah, right there. So really the Lower Mill lots, the goal here is to provide light industrial space for medium to larger users. We still have a very tight market for all light industrial space, but especially, you know, 2,500 to 10,000 square feet is really where people are needing space, and usually a little bit smaller than that. These buildings can all be demised down to smaller spaces. Working with Livermore Architects, we have a building of 25,000 square feet on the north side. That's the one that's just south of Glassometry, and then a 32,000 square foot building on the east side. Again, both of those were maximized. You've got truck access and a loading dock on the southern building. There's not enough room for a loading dock on the north side building, so that would just be overhead bays. We had, as I said, 2 cost estimates on this. The most recent one I received on Friday, and it actually reduced the square foot price from $300 a square foot plus down to $150,000 to $200,000 a square foot, or sorry, $200 a square foot, geez. So that reduces our cost quite a bit. At those prices, our return is at least in the positive. What I'm assuming with my analysis is an 85 cents a square foot lease rate, which is top of the market for these types of buildings up in Odell. We may be able to push it up to 90, depending on the type of building the port would decide to build. And let's see, what else do I have to tell you about these? That's about it. So I guess what I want to know from the commission is, I think the next steps here are to market the buildings to see if we can get some pre-lease tenants interested in these buildings, and then come back to you if we're able to get them at least 50% pre-leased, and then move forward with potential architecture and engineering design of a building. And then we would be able to potentially move forward with a construction contract and bidding process. So any questions on this one?
Yeah, and I'd like to see, sorry, am I cutting somebody off? But I'd like to see the financial analysis you did on the other real estate asset proposals where, you know, I'm particularly interested in where the cash flow analysis looks like. Because in previous, you know, assessments, you've had most of the payoff is at the end of a 20-year financing period, and it actually run negative cash flow on the first front end.
Yep, and that's consistent with this. You're going to run a negative cash flow for about the first 12 years.
Even at 200 a foot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Now the larger building, your square foot costs are much less. You're at like $150 a square foot. So you get a payback a little bit earlier. But again, it's a more expensive building because it's larger. So yeah, I can bring back the cash flow analysis for you. So you can see that on all of these, any that you decide to move forward, or if you want to see more analysis, we can bring that back.
Yeah, certainly within the context of 6 to 6.5 million and a payback window of 20 years or less.
And my other assumptions here are, I think I assume this one would be at an 8 cap on the sale. And it's 100% financed, so.
Well, then maybe, we get 30% or 20% equity into the financing. Those are the numbers I'd like to play with, and I need the analysis to get to the meat of it.
Yep, I can send you that, or we can go over it at the next meeting or further down the road.
Okay.
So the price per square foot is still up at 200 for a light industrial building?
For the small building, yeah. And again, remember, this is based on 10% design drawings. And that does not include soft costs at the $150 a square foot. So you're going to add, maybe $20 to $30 more a square foot for soft costs. So yeah, you're getting up there with both buildings. It's pretty expensive. We didn't keep a lot of contingency in this last estimate. There's like a 5% contingency because we wanted to see sort of what the true numbers were looking like at this point. But yeah, it's expensive. We are seeing some drops in cost in the current situation. And in talks with both of these estimators and also the architect, they feel that those costs are going to drop some more. But again, it's, uncertainty is sort of the theme right now.
So,
And I assume that $4 to $4.5 million cost is for both buildings, correct?
Each.
Yeah. Oh, each.
yeah, so I would like to see the financials, but that's probably not going to get there. If it's our whole 6 million and it produces negative cash flow for the near term.
And have you shopped at all the market? Is there any interest in purchase of the land now that it's more shovel ready, especially if we get the wetlands contained on the one lot?
I mean, we've been working with one buyer now for a couple of years. I think that's pretty much stagnated and over. I get some interest now and again, but really there has not been a lot of interest right now in the purchase. There's, a couple people sort of hovering around. But yeah, the last few months has been pretty quiet.
And that's a fabulous land bank. So I'm not really nervous about having to do anything with it.
So I guess my question here is then, would you like me to move forward to the next steps? Really go out to the market, see if there's a pre-lease interest in, one or both of these buildings?
Okay. Maybe we should do that roll call.
Well, John, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, can we possibly go through all the properties and then go back to a yes or no until you hear everything and put it in perspective and you go, oh, that sounds even better than the first one. Does that sound logical?
Yeah, that works for me. That's great.
Okay, so the next one then would be the commercial hangars. So again, these are the ones on the west side of the airport that would be in the newly shovel-ready pad sites created by the Connect 6 project. So this was designed, again, 10% designed by Aaron Faegre, who does a lot of airport work around the Northwest. And you'll see in there, there's, he wanted to see how many aircraft you could fit. But the parties that are interested in this are really R&D companies that are tied to the UAV industry here locally. One of them has an aircraft, one of them does not. But really they can site in this industrial space, and there's such a lack of it. And again, they're ready to site at the airport, and they're excited about that. If you can scroll down just a little bit, Genevieve, that'd be great. So again, it's a basic hangar design with potential mezzanines. The cost here is, again, pretty high. We're looking at like 3.5 million, but again, this is 10% design. There's a heavy contingency in this one. It was not as robust of a cost estimate, just because hangars are much simpler, more straightforward buildings. So there's not a lot there to make decisions on that are different, like you would have in a normal LI building. And so this again is close to 30,000 square feet. Your cost to build is a lot cheaper, and your return is a lot greater because you can still get about 85 cents a square foot. You're leasing to R&D companies who are going to be using this for their office space and their engineering space. So your lease rate is much higher. So that's why you see a much better return. Again, the assumptions are a little bit different here. You've got a 9 cap because it's a hangar building, not an industrial building. So you've got a high cap rate, you've got a 20-year assumption, and your payback, if I remember right, I don't have it in front of me, starts at about, you still have negative for a couple years there, but it's a lot quicker of a payback. I think it's like year 3, you start getting into positive numbers here. So we have, like I said earlier, a business that's ready to sign a pre-lease for 50% of this building. There's interest from a couple of other local companies, as well as one from Colorado who wants to locate to Hood River because of the UAV industry cluster here. So again, I can bring you cash flow analysis on this one so you can see that, but really it's a much cheaper building, similar lease rates. Yeah, any questions on that one?
And just for clarity, the port would own the land and the building, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This one seems to be a bit of a safer bet.
You repeat that, Christy? I didn't get what you said there.
Oh, I just said this seems to be a safer bet. There's already interest. There's already a demand. It seems attractive.
Yeah, like Hobie suggests, I like to go through all of these, but this one looks pretty good.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
No, so I made a statement, Ann, real quick about research and development for drones and stuff. That market's going to just blossom, and you're going to have a big market in GA, general aviation, from the high-end aircraft, and there's going to be big demand for that. These aircraft owners that have a $12,000 airplane or a $40,000 airplane, the tarmac, there's no market for that. They're dinosaurs. But anybody who has, $250,000 aircraft and higher, they're going to want nice facilities. So that also applies to the T hangar, which is coming up next. But just let everybody know, GA is growing, and as this virus gets more and more restrictive, more and more GA pilots are flying themselves. But they got to have an aircraft that goes, a fair distance, 1,000 to 1,200 miles for fueling, to make it warrant their time. But there is a growing market in general aviation on the high end side.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's the kind of interest we're seeing on the other side. Okay, all right, so this is the east side of the airport. This is the smaller private storage hangars, as Commissioner Everett calls them. So what you see here is a design that...
And can I interrupt? We don't want to use the word storage. We just went through a hangar inspection. No storage. That's not the word we used.
So we call it garages?
They're box hangars and T.
There we go.
So the box hangars are the square ones, and the T hangars are the long ones because they're shaped like an airplane T to hold the wings. So they're smaller than a box hanger. So anyway, what you have here are 2 different sizes of box hangars. One size is about 3,000 square feet and one size is about 5,000 square feet. So you can fit multiple aircraft in both of those, 2 to 5 aircraft, depending on their size. And then you've got a strip of two strips of T hangars going north to south. The reason we had them design it like this is so that the port commissioners, as well as potential buyers / tenants, could see what the options are. This could very well be a phased project wherein the port decides to build some hangars to test a market, or decides to land lease some land to a private entity to, if you could scroll back up just for a second, Genevieve, thank you, decides to land lease some to a builder. There's lots of options here. We, as part of our planning session with the FAA and our annual CIP meeting with them, have included the design and construction of the paving on the air side, which means anything served by an aircraft is eligible for FAA funding. So that has been added to our CIP list. That's 90-10 money for the port. So potentially we could get quite a bit of this paving paid for by non-primary entitlement dollars, which we get access to $150,000 a year. We're assuming that this would take a couple of those years of non-primary entitlements to build out, about $300,000 for the paving. Again, depending on the of how we lay this out and which types of hangars, if any, the commission decides to move forward with at this time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just could you just briefly outline the paving that would be eligible for FAA funding?
Sure. It's hard to show. So essentially any paving that is accessible by the aircraft. So like to the north of those big hangars where vehicles come in, like cars and things, that would not be eligible. And so the paving, the driveway back there behind all the hangars and up to the backs of the hangars would not be eligible. But anywhere where the aircraft are going to be accessing would be.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So now if you could scroll down just a little bit, Genevieve, thank you. So again, 10% design on these. We have local interest of 13 potential owners who would like to build their own hangars. We don't have enough room for all of those owners here to build their own hangars. I did a land lease survey as part of the Northwestern Airport Managers group that the port is a part of. So we got a land lease survey of about 20 different airports around the Pacific Northwest. So we know what our rates would likely be here. 35 to 30 cents a square foot for land lease. That would, if we were able to lease out all of this space and said, okay, private industry, you're gonna come in and build all of these hangars and the port didn't retain any, that revenue would be about $25,000 a year at full build out, with the 90-10 money from the FAA to do the paving. If the port would like to build some of these themselves, the little spreadsheet there, or the little cells down there at the bottom, just assumed a 4,000 square foot hangar, which is right between the 3,000 and 5,000 square foot. I just split the difference. Construction cost is pretty high on these. Again, we got an estimate from Aaron Fagry, who works in this industry, and the return requirement based on the current rates. Daryl did a rate survey last year. Based on those rates was a negative return throughout the hold period for those hangars. Again, assuming a 20-year hold, a 10 cap this time with hangars. So the rates, unless we see additional rate studies, and maybe Commissioner Strike, you can help with this. If there's other rates that we're missing, that would be great to add those in, but we're just not seeing the rates up there to be able to support the construction. Potentially though, for new T hangars, we might be able to make that a little more attractive and help support the 35 plus people we have on our wait list for T hangars, if that's something the commission would like to do. Any questions on that before I move on?
Just one quick question. So these hangars would be for those nicer aircraft that Commissioner Strike was talking about, correct?
Some of them, I mean, it depends. Yeah, I mean, the little hangars are for little airplanes, and some of those can cost you $100,000. And then there's also larger hangars that would be able to fit a larger aircraft that, yeah, would be on the higher end, or a bunch of aircrafts stuffed in one together. Because we do
And-
have
Yeah,
people
what
with
I'm saying-
multiple aircrafts.
And one
Yeah,
is
what I'm
the,
saying, guys, is that the high-end aircraft market is the growth potential here in the next 5, 10 years. Is that when you have people that have an aircraft that will go a longer distance, and those hangars will accommodate a $14,000 airplane and a $1 million airplane, but it's the growth potential and the willingness to pay price per square foot at a top value is the high-end aircraft. That's our market share we're after.
No, and I agree. And so then I guess my last question is, I know that we have runway constraints. So what is the largest aircraft that our
Well,
airport can actually handle?
It depends on your pilot and what they're willing to do. But a lot of the small jets are being built so they can land on smaller and smaller runways. They're becoming more efficient. So we can get a small jet in here right now, and we do. Those aircraft are pretty quiet coming in and out. You don't have it's not like a 747 coming in over your house. They're pretty quiet going in and out. But you can get a pretty big aircraft here. But pilots that are going to be based here are going to be, a smaller jet aircraft, and then the smaller single engine planes you see.
Just give everybody an idea, the T hangar that my plane is in the Dalles, it's a 40-foot wingspan T hangar. So it gives you an idea what size craft we're looking at.
So Ann, your contractor, did he give you the estimate for the T hangars, those two rectangular ones? Cost?
Yeah, they were about the same cost, and I don't have it up in front of me right now. It was like $80 a square foot to 100, 80 being the T hangars, 100 being the box type hangars. And again, this is a 10%, so there's nothing in there, and there's some variation between if you're going to have restrooms or that type of thing, or mezzanines in some of them.
Yeah, I was just thinking of just the T hangars, just those set of rectangular ones.
Mhm.
And how many?
$80 a foot.
Pardon?
$80 a foot.
Ann, have you had any dialogue with the individuals on the waiting list, what they were willing to pay per price per foot for lease rate from the port?
For land lease or for?
No.
rates?
For hangar lease.
Well, Daryl probably has some insight on that. No, I haven't, not at this point yet, because we're not there quite yet.
So the Dalles is $285 for a 40-foot opening door T hangar right now, $285.
Unfortunately, Commissioner Strike, my interactions with the T hangar tenants is that it's expensive. So of course, that's what they're going to say though, because they're paying their bill. But but that's what
Okay.
I've heard.
And you were saying just T hangars, Commissioner Strike, not the box hangars?
Well, that's I have a reference to the Dalles as far as price per square foot. So it gives everybody in the commission an idea what we're talking about. A 40-foot door opening and a T hangar is $285 at the Dalles.
And we can come back and do, if you decide to move forward with the next step to sort of pursue this, we can bring you back the full cash flow analysis and lease rates. We'll have to do an additional box rate survey or box hanger survey. Like I said, Daryl did a T hanger lease rate survey, but we'll have to do a box survey. And we'll have to survey the potential tenants as well to gauge interest.
Right. Because anybody who has a high-end aircraft, they don't want it on the tarmac. They don't want it to sit on the ramp. It's just the UV rays are really extremely hard on it, especially a composite aircraft. So they're probably willing to pay top dollar for a nice facility.
Well, and also
it's a big investment. It's their life.
With all of the work that we've done over the last 3 years with the South Apron and the North Apron, we've lost 30 tie-down parking spaces. So it was tight before we did those projects, and now we have even less parking. So that just makes our market larger for hangars and enables us to bump that lease rate up. So when I'm doing my lease rates here, I'm kind of going, to the high end of the survey, middle of the road, but we could potentially be leading the pack with lease rates on some of these, just because Hood River is such a special location for flying.
But what I found in my history of flying is that, an aircraft is, your livelihood's important, and you don't want it to be on the tarmac where people have access to it, because you just can't pull over the side of the road on a cloud and take care of your problems, right, Fred?
It's
You
true,
gotta have an
Hobie.
aircraft. I was just saying, you just can't pull over in the air on a cloud and fix your problem you have on your aircraft. You got to have an aircraft that's, dependable and safe, and that's one way of providing that is having a safe hangar in an enclosed area. So most aviators are willing to pay for that.
Hobie, how large is your hangar over in the Dalles?
The opening, it's a T hangar. The opening is 40 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no more questions, let's move on to the next one. And
Can are we intending to drill down quite this much in these items? I mean, I know you have a scheduled time here that ends in 8 minutes. I don't know if I was prepared to go quite this in depth on each of these things, or.
Okay, we'll move on.
How are we doing this? I was prepared for you to give us this information and us to decide if we want you to answer these next questions and drill down into the details.
Yeah, my understanding is that Commissioner Strike wanted us to go through them all and then go back through them and answer the yes or no.
Which is fine, but I just didn't know that, do you want us to have a lengthy discussion on each line? I mean, all questions are valid, but we planned, I see their schedule ends in 8 minutes. So I'm wondering if we want to have these discussions now, or these discussions after you do the research that's going to generate the questions that we're going to come up with.
I think that's
We've got 450 on this segment. So she's got, 27 minutes, but that's still, we'd want a discussion at the end.
I read it as 4:30, excuse me.
I adjusted it all because of the executive session. We picked up some juice there. Yeah. But point taken, we do need the time to make the discussion about which ones we want to proceed with at the end of the go through.
Okay.
So Barman's up.
Barman's up, and this one's pretty straightforward. Barman Property is the last C2 lot there, and the commissioners wanted us to complete the traffic study, and Michael has been working on a basic RFI draft. And so the next steps here would be to approve that request for information strategy and then issue it. And hopefully we would get a number of valid ideas and proposals for potential partnerships, and we could then have the commission look through those to see what sort of ideas are out there for the development of this parcel, and what the opportunities are. There's not a lot to say about this one since there's not been a lot of work done to it. It's under an acre, and that's a pretty small lot for somebody to develop. So again, the next steps, approve the RFI strategy, issue it, and then review those when they come back.
Okay.
That sounds good. The only question that I have on that Barman property is I know that there's a transportation hub there. So when we're looking at future developments, do we have a contract with CAT or anyone else that requires that transportation hub to stay, or depending upon what goes in there, we have the right to decide what happens to that?
We have the right to decide.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And I'll go ahead and let Michael take this one. This is lot 1, Anchorway discussion.
So the preliminary subdivision plan was approved, and that's been hanging on. It still exists. There was an extension approved on it, but by following through on that, it would require at minimum order magnitude of $5 to $6 million worth of infrastructure investment. And we're not at all prepared to do that. And the possibility of collaborating with the Urban Renewal Agency is likely not possible. And so this, if you scroll down, Genevieve, is taking a step forward on that lot by constructing what has been in every plan and every requirement from ODOT or the city, which is to create an alternative access or egress route, I should say, right turn, right in, right out only around that interchange. So if you recall, the public infrastructure plan identified this as a discrete project. The order of magnitude cost estimates about 1.6 million. What this would do is provide a needed piece of infrastructure. It would relocate the utilities that run east-west in that, create a transit center, which would be a alternative site for the one at Barman. And so it fits transportation needs, fits a public transit opportunity, and essentially it establishes the next key step towards what could be a subdivision plan for the north side and or the south side separately, and it's essentially an investment as a setup piece for future development of Lot 1. It doesn't have an immediate cash flow return, but it does accelerate the process at a future date for development of those properties, and those could happen much quicker with this investment. So it's a longer term play. It's clearly not a near term one. The only thing I'd add is that when we've done project like this before with in the Waterfoot subdivision, for example, there was significant interest from the EDA and from an immediate opportunity grant fund at ODOT. So there is a possibility, maybe a good one, of being able to leverage some grant dollars from one of those sources for a project like this. The last thing I'll say is that what this would allow is essentially the port to build a private street built to city engineering standards that would be retained by the port. It could add additional parking kiosks, for example, but would not require much in the way of approvals from the city other than an access permit to second. That's it.
Okay. So you want to cycle to the top, Ann, and just vote as we go, or start from here and go up?
Oh, we can start from here and go up, or you want to? Yeah, let's start from here and go back up. So is this something that the commissioners would like us to take the next steps on?
Then maybe we could do this if commissioners would just respond by name and go quickly so we can get through them.
You might start with if there are any questions about each one.
Okay.
Should be answered.
Michael, did you have any information from the city? I know that is it First or Front Street or whatever the street is to the east? If we do this project, does that trigger anything on that street?
Yeah, it likely would. The median there would need to be cut back, and we could be required to, or we may want to, improve the paving on that southerly portion of First Street. But
okay,
we've met with the city, the planning director, and he has said, this is a pretty straightforward deal. There's an approval process, but it's administrative. It doesn't require going to the planning commission or anything. But we would have to have conversations with the city engineer about either requirements or recommendations for First Street.
Okay, are there any further questions? I'm going to push a little bit just so we can get through it. If people don't want me to, speak up.
Let me just add that the one step that's not listed here is And it could be kind of a contingent going forward recommendation, which is to seek interest from different grant for obtaining a grant through different grant programs.
Okay. And let's start with the by the roll call. Mr. Chapman? I can see you on my screen as well.
I don't want to go first.
Okay. Commissioner Strike?
Okay, go ahead and I'll go first. Lot 1, this is that, I add this category, maybe. It's a light yes. I've always been in love with Lot 1. I think it's our crown jewel. So if the majority of the board wants to go forward with money being spent and time being spent by staff on Lot 1, I'm in favor of that. We'll move on to Barman. Barman is a definite no for me. I think Barman is one of our second best. Between that and the maritime frontage is our two best partials. And the reason why, because it has that residential aspect into it, and the height availability of building is the highest we have on the waterfront area, and in conjunction with the location to downtown merchants. So I am not in favor of moving forward the Barman property at all unless we do it ourselves and maintain it. And we'll move on to the T hangers and the box hangers. I am definitely in favor of those. And I'm definitely in favor of the airport commercial hangar. And at this time, with further information we received today, I am not willing to move forward on the lower handle. So you've got going forward, Lower Mill, no. Commercial hangar, yes. T hangers, yes. Barman, no. And Lot 1's maybe or a yes.
Excellent, Hobie.
Commissioner
Couldn't be done
Strike,
any better.
Commissioner Strike, if I can just clarify something on the box and T hangers, you're interested in us exploring both options of potential ownership and potential land leases?
No, I am not. No land leases at this time. I want to get back to us owning things. We can manage things. Michael and I had a conversation at lunch, and and sometimes we lose the ability to manage the best for all 23,000 constituents if we give things up and we never get it back. So I'm really reluctant. I want to reel us back in that we maintain for the voice of 23,000 people, not a small amount of people who run entities that we own. And I think that airport is a good example of that. We've lost sight of that. We have somebody else running our airport, our asset, and I want to get it back under our control.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Merriweather.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing Hobie did. I'll go through them all. I agree with lower handle. I agree with Hobie on that one, but this isn't the time for that. The commercial hangar, it looks like the best prospect that we have. I am in favor of it. The box and T hangars, I'm okay with it if the commission wants to proceed with that. It looks like it's a pretty low value to us, and especially if we own it. I agree, though. I'm fine with us continuing to own it. I don't think there's $25,000 a year if we let people land lease from us. That's not worth fooling with. I'd rather keep the property. Lot 1, yes, I'm in favor of moving forward with that and getting that started. Again, I'd love to see some EDA money come into it. I disagree with Hobie on the RFI for Barman. If we do an RFI and we don't get proposals or information that we think is acceptable, we can go back and do it ourselves, or we can look at other options. But I'd like to see what the market will bear and what sort of opportunities might come in from that. And if we don't like what we see, we go on and do something different.
Okay, Commissioner Shepherd.
I got all those. Whoever's next, I'm ready.
Okay, my immediate yes is also the commercial hangars. I don't want to do leases, but the T boxes are fine with me. T and box hangars are fine with me also. I would prefer to own the property, not land lease. Even though I do not like that picture at all, I am a yes for lot 1. I think we can talk about what that actually looks like, but I am a yes for the lot 1. Hanel Mill is a definite no. My ideas for the kind of development on Barman that I would like and what I think we can do there are definitely would shy towards, I think, what Commissioner Strike has in mind. I would be okay if the majority of the commission wants to look into that. I'm okay with it. And I expressed this to both Michael and John, I am very dubious of throwing out an RFI, getting one hotel applicant or one applicant rushed in front of us. I'll immediately be a no. So I don't mind if the majority of the commission wants to, but that one I'm pretty cautious of.
Okay, and Commissioner Shepherd, let me ask you one more question. My oversight, what do you think about the industrial opportunity?
Industrial opportunity, which one? I'm sorry, at Hannell Mill?
Yeah.
I mentioned that one. I am a no on that one.
Well, that's okay.
I think he was referring to what we were speaking about earlier.
In the executive session.
Yes.
Oh, I'm fine looking
At industrial opportunities.
I'm not in favor of anything that costs. You can look into the building itself is for sale or the development of the other building. Which one?
The building itself is for sale.
Oh, absolutely. Look into that one.
Okay.
That's fine. I think it's way overpriced, but prove me wrong. Look into it. Certainly.
Yeah. And let me point something out, and granted, we need to look at that, but what I suggested earlier, because the RFI doesn't cost us anything at this point, we're pretty close to that $6.5 million if we include that other opportunity in Odell with these other things we're talking about, and that's Barman Lot 1, the T hangars, and the commercial hangar. We're pretty much up in range if you add that opportunity in Odell. So anyway, make that point.
And Commissioner Strike, the opportunity up, industrial opportunity.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Then Mr. Chapman.
So I agree that a well-priced industrial opportunity up in Odell would be a great thing. I also agree that the price per square footage dollars for the lands that we own up there are they don't work, especially knowing that we have so much interest at the airport. I think we should focus on the airport with all of the opportunities at the airport. Lot 1, if we can do the infrastructure and maybe look at some grant opportunities and start exploring some things, that's not going to trigger a huge price point for the commission. I think we should probably move forward with adding that road because it's going to have to be added no matter what happens there. And as far as the Barman property, I agree with Commissioner Merriweather. I think that we should open it up for submission of ideas. I don't think it should be a short window. I think it should be a very long window, maybe several months. And we should say we're not going to look at anything until the end of the process. If we get some good ideas and some good suggestions, maybe. And we should proceed very cautiously on that one.
Okay. And the hangars, you were yes on both of them?
Yes, absolutely. They seem to have the most interest and the most potential at this point. So
again, just for clarification on that, you would be interested in pursuing both the purchase or the land lease and the build options for the box T hangars, or just build?
Just build in that we would own them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then for me, I am yes on lot 1. I'm yes on RFI for Barman. The box T hangars, I know, unless the cash flow is, I won't support anything that's negative cash flow.
What about the lease option for that one, Commissioner Everett?
Well, we already, it's $25,000 a year. I don't think there'd be much analysis beyond that. At $25,000 a year, no, I'm in favor. I agree with Commissioner Merriweather that I'd rather land bank it and see what develops in the future.
Great, thank you.
Commercial hangar, yes, absolutely. Lower Handle, no. And industrial opportunity, yes.
Commissioner Ever, can I just make a comment in regard to the Barman property? I'm so strong on that because I just felt like the board was moving really fast last time we talked about it. And I'm like Christy and Dave and Ben, that we want to be cautionary and we want to make sure that we extinguish all possible build outs there, not the first one that comes to our table. So I'm in favor of an RFI, but just cautiously do not throw it in my face and make me make a decision tomorrow about it, because I don't want that. I will fight you all the way.
Understood.
And a question on the David Merriweather, I didn't get your yes or no on the industrial opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you, good job. And I think we're still under time, maybe.
We are under time and it was an excellent job. Thank you. Yeah, that takes us on to airport noise reduction. And that's probably you again, Ann, isn't it?
Yep,
And do you want me to keep the packet up or do you want to just talk?
no, pack it up, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I won't talk for long, I promise. Okay, so for the last 6 months, we've been working with a noise work group who has carried on some of the noise reduction work that started back in 2017 with the Fly Friendly program. If you remember, that was a public process of about a year that got us to that Fly Friendly development and adoption. So this new work group was formed by 3 airport advisory committee members and 3 members of the public. And their charter, as you may remember, was basically to work through some of the, first of all, identify the issues that were causing the noise problems and work through some potential solutions to those issues. So there's been a lot of work. We have met 1 to 2 times per month. And some potential actions have come out of that. This really is just a time for you to be updated on that process and to have any input on it at this point, understanding that it will come back to you in the form of a final report that will likely have consensus from the work group and the AAC on some recommendations, and then other recommendations that would not have consensus, but would still be there for consideration now or in the future. So again, this is just the first part of the process. There's nothing final here. It's just a time for you to check in and have some input. So this is up to you. I can go through each potential action. There's under 10 here. Or if you would like to just ask me questions on them, we can do that too, whatever you'd like to do.
And I don't need a rundown of all of them. Question.
Yeah, no, I've read them. I think they're all options.
What is
No
the
real-
Randy's saying we would essentially get a minority report potentially. We'll get a recommendation from the AAC through the work group, but then there would also be a supplemental or like I said, a minority opinion or whatever for some of those things that weren't included. And that's fine with me. I'd like to see these folks work to get a consensus if they can, but I also think we ought to hear people if they feel like they couldn't be heard. But I don't need to go through these. Back to that question. I read them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. And I think this is wonderful. We haven't dropped the ball. We haven't forgot about this issue. It's real, it's tangible, it's here, and we're trying to address it. And I think you're doing a great job by staying on top of it. I hear good feedback from the committee members and also the pilots to use it at the airport. So kudos to you, and I'm behind you 100%.
Thank you. Any other questions, input?
I'd like to second what Commissioner Strike said. I know this hasn't been a lot of fun for you working through this issue for the last couple of years. I really appreciate all your efforts to try to to mitigate this situation as best you can. You've done a really good job with it.
Thank you. Okay, with that, if there's nothing else, we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to the other issues.
Yeah, I guess that's back to me. Let me just make one comment on that prior subject. The attachment was the first draft of the way the working group was describing and characterizing the situation. So read it in that light. It's the first draft of the report that would be provided by staff. So in the remaining time, we can get into any of these, all of them, or none of them. These were the additional issues that didn't quite make the cut in terms of the fall planning session, but are relevant. Will be important as we move forward, as we prepare our budget and as we look ahead to next fiscal year. And sooner. The airport FBO is something that was extended. Ann is starting negotiations or has been in negotiations with the current FBO. There's questions about that come from the noise work group. And frankly, in a way, sort of channeling the fiscal question, what services are being provided, and do we need to continue to pay for that level of service? Or does the business model of the FBO allow for a sustaining operation without subsidy?
Can I get a synopsis, Michael? Because I'm ignorant in these areas. I mean, does our FBO now offer a level of service that is adequate? What's that mean?
Let's hear from Ann too, but I've always felt, first was Classic Wings. Well, before that it was Annie and Denny. And then it was Classic Wings. And at that point, this goes back quite a few years now, we were looking for an FBO, and there's not a lot of folks that are willing to set up an FBO at a small airport and provide a level of services. There just is, at least at that time, there was not a significant, or at least a significant enough revenue stream. So if you're an FBO, you can provide mechanic services, you can provide pilot training, you can provide scenic flying, you provide and dispense fuel, but typically an FBO as a sustaining operation is a larger airport. In years past, I think we were paying $1,000 a year. I mean, $1,000 a month, and then most recently, last couple of years, it's been about $1,800. So it's an interesting question. At least in the past, it's been that we always, as a public airport and as a port authority, we wanted to make sure there was a public entry point at the airfield. So anybody that just wants to learn about flying and go talk to a pilot, or go talk about taking lessons or ground school, there's an opportunity to do that. And so the FBO, as a sort of a representative of a public agency, was an important factor, as well as having eyes on the airport and being able to, if there's an incident of some sort, having folks up there that, generally speaking, can respond and observe the runway and obstructions and inappropriate uses and things like that. I think the question remains, or at least it's been called, is as we go into an RFP for potentially a new FBO, what's the appropriate, if any, level of call it financial support from the port?
And do you have any insight into the FBO's books? How much money they're making?
Well, that'll be part of the new FBO agreement, as well as we will need to see their financials at least once a year. So yeah, we've gotten very little. We do get reports monthly regarding fuel sales and tie downs, which is what's currently required in the FBO agreement. But no, we don't have a great picture.
And what's the sense of your negotiations?
Well, they're just now starting. Actually, we've gone back and forth with different iterations of an FBO agreement over the last couple of years. So I'm pretty confident that we can get to a document and deal points pretty quickly. But part of this too is a request for proposals. We should, it's not a requirement by the FAA, but a suggestion. We should go out for an RFP for an FBO. And now would be the time to do that since it's been 6 years. So we may get some other takers. We may be negotiating with the current FBO. It really depends on who responds.
Have we
You know,
ever
and I was just
considered
thinking,
not contracting it? Not franchising it and doing it as a port function? Has that ever been considered? Or Commissioner Strike, were you kicking that around personally?
yeah, I was just gonna touch on it, Dave. You know, one thing I just thought about this recently was about how we can incorporate the Columbia River College into maybe a vocationary opportunity for us to show business, how businesses run, because as technology goes further and further, we're getting less liabilities because the self-serve fueling is going to be done by the pilot. So we don't need to have somebody competent in that aspect of it. So it may be a situation where we can incorporate basically free labor as part of a credit in regard to the college or the high school that could cut our labor cost and still give a benefit to our community through business opportunities and education.
Are you, if I'm understanding this right, what you're suggesting is for the port maybe to take on some of these services and bring in an educational component for like internship types, paid internships or work experience? Is that kind of what I'm
Exactly, and yeah, and like the mechanical aspect of it, we can't do that, of course, in-house. But yeah, maybe take more control of it back. But it's getting simpler. It's getting easier to run the FBO. There's less demand for, because the FBO used to be your person who held your hand. They told you everything about the area when you flew in there. They had maps, had everything, and told you that personal touch. And with ForeFlight and all new technology, that's at your hand anyway on your tablet. So it may just be an opportunity for us to grow some vocational skills for our high school students or our college students for business career.
Hobie, I agree with that. Commissioner Stark, I agree with that. The only thing that I worry about is if there's inconsistencies in the quality of people. I mean, it could be a really great program, or if we get a bad group at any given time, it would just be something that we would have to very much stay on top of.
Right. And what I'm saying, Christy, is that, technology is eliminating the liability more and more from us, because you're going to fill your own plane up. So you're not going to have some kid that doesn't pay attention. He probably won't be involved in the fueling. You'll have the pilot in command doing that. But the mechanical part of it, we definitely have to sub that out, but it could be at a different rate or even, revenue neutral to provide somebody a space for that. But I think we just got to revisit it. Times have changed and technology is advancing, and we're becoming more and more of a destination location.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So that's informative discussion for me. I don't know that it makes any decisions.
No, and I'll say that this will come back to you in the form of an RFP for an FBO. Let's find another acronym. And then the results of the FBO will come back to the commission after that step. So this is a heads up. It's a process that will be brought back to you.
Yeah, it may be a more appropriate conversation after we see what sort of response and proposals we get.
Yeah. You want to go on to the next one?
Well, the next subject I'd like to hear about is the succession planning.
Oh, geez, you're okay.
But just in case we run out of time.
All right, so we'll go to the last one. So this is actually on my work plan, and so the commission said, yeah, that's an important thing to focus on. So the grim reality is that there are several employees here at the port. I won't name them all, but that are reaching that kind of looking ahead to retirement. It's just the fact. So there's some really strong capabilities in different areas, and it's possible as you look ahead 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, let's say likely that some of them will be departing. So clearly the commission should anticipate that possibility and should prepare for how to backfill that expertise, that experience, and the functions that exist today. And I am incredibly proud of the staff you have and the work they do, and the volume and quality of it. And I will say that we all would want that to continue in the future with unabated, without a break, and it will be a more challenging environment when you get out to that 4, 5, 6 year time frame, depending on the bridge replacement. So I think that looking ahead, I think the port will be entering a challenging time, and it'll be informed and improved and helped by a strong strategic plan, but that plan can never anticipate the needs of that time. So what I am formulating in my mind, it hasn't been on paper yet, and I haven't talked to many people, it's just a way to start the conversation and lay out some steps that could anticipate that eventuality and position the port in the best way for it. So it's a little bit of an awkward discussion in public session. I don't think it's an eligible subject in an executive session, but it's a necessary one. So we need to find a way to talk about it, think it through, and start to set steps in motion or in place so that we're in accommodating this reality.
Maybe a vulnerable skills list would be some start.
Yeah, that's absolutely. There's some valuable expertise on staff here that would be very challenging to backfill or to find a substitute for. No one's irreplaceable, but we have some specific expertise here that is in a small market. It will be difficult to obtain.
Yeah, I don't think this is anything that gets fixed in one discussion, but I'm very happy to see it on this agenda and don't want to let it drop. I mean, if a vulnerable skills list is an appropriate way to move forward, whatever in your mind, Michael, I'd like to see it take better form. No hurry, just one baby step at a time.
Yeah, it's amorphous now. No, I have some specific ideas that I probably will vet with individual staff to get a sort of a sense, and then also I think it's appropriate to vet with individual commissioners or in twos to get your thought process into it. So it's a little bit of a longer lead time, but I think it probably needs to be something that has some known structure by the time for spring planning and budget preparation.
That's great.
Any other thoughts by other commissioners? It's on my work plan, so you said it was a priority.
I think it's important for everyone to list the things that nobody would know, in case there's ever an incident where someone, can't show up to work the next day and someone has to be able to get in and, pick up where they left off and limp along, and having that spreadsheet or that document that says this is how you get into these systems. And we all have a million passwords, and we all have those strange websites that you have a username and whatever. And
Yeah,
we found out about it. We realized this several years ago when a good friend of ours passed away, and his wife at the time didn't know anything. And when they were playing around with his computer, they found a spreadsheet, and it was literally titled "In Case I Die," and it had everything in it. And I think that the port needs that file.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
So now we all have them. But
I don't.
You should have one.
I should have.
Everyone should have that folder, and then everyone knows the name of it. Search for it in case of a really bad situation. But I think it's really important.
Very good.
I don't want to do anything that'll make it easier for my wife to rub me out.
I got no comment.
Very good. Yeah, no comment. All right, if we're done with that, I'll move back up the list. Ordinance 24, this is a particularly interesting topic for Jerry. I know he's very attracted to this. It's described here. Ordinance 24 is basically something that's has very little tooth to it. And it's very difficult to enforce provisions. It's our ordinance. If it rises to a criminal situation, clearly that's when the police respond. As Jerry's noted, our ultimate sanction is defined in our ordinance is trespass, which sounds good, except it's very difficult to trespass someone because it raises all sorts of issues about how long they are trespassed, how, when can they come back on port property, whether they have appeal rights. When appeals the decision to trespass, that's not a criminal, like, well, help me out here, Jerry. It could be criminal if it's trespass, but enforcement of our ordinance, especially something like that, would require, at least based on the current DA's opinion, that we would essentially have to ask as the prosecutor for in court. Jerry, summarize.
No, that's probably true. The thing about the port ordinances is that the 777 does authorize these punitive ordinances, and we have one. And it also authorizes the port to appoint officers to enforce the ordinance provisions. Well, in the Port of Hood Rivers case, such a small port, what that really means, if you have an officer to start enforcing ordinance provisions, they need to be trained like an officer. There's a lot that goes into it. So the Port of Portland has its own police force, but they can afford to, and they've got a lot more going on. So what we try to do is, if there's a matter that comes up that is a criminal offense, like trespass can be, the port does have the right to keep people from going on to port property that's not open for public access, or has the right to, in certain situations, tell people to leave. But the problem with public property is that the bottom line is that it's open for public access. And so when you get into a situation where you're trying to tell someone they've trespassed, you might be able to prosecute that. But if you tell them they can't come back, that has a whole bunch of ramifications involved in it. And you have to have rules, and you have to give them due process. It gets more complicated than it's worth. So the hope is that you can enlist the city police, and if it's a state statute, a criminal statute that's being violated, that they can pursue it that way and take it through the DA's office.
So this is an issue that we wanted to just put in front of you. For some reason, at least to me, this was a particularly challenging year with some instances of misconduct on property where staff is really interested in having someone leave or sanctioned in some way, but we're really at least not very easily able to do so. So the ideal here would be to consider changes to 24 in Jerry's direction that could help us in the future, or may conclude that we just can't modify it in a way that's going to make a difference.
Let me ask you something. I guess both of you, Michael and Jerry, if we wanted to trespass someone, say out of the marina, they're not supposed to be there, they refuse to go. Do we have the authority to do that, or do we really have to call the city police or county sheriff or deputy to come in and exercise that enforcement?
I'd have to double check our ordinance with regard to that question. I think we have that authority under the ordinance, but the better approach would be to exercise that authority through the police and utilize a state statute and them being cited into court.
Yeah, okay. Have we ever looked at the possibility, and I don't know what level of response we get from them, or if we even ask them to help us trespass somebody, just to get them off the property, that sort of thing. Is it possible that we could contract with either the city or the county for that sort of enforcement assistance and help, and maybe even processing the prosecution and that sort of thing?
The port
agreement.
actually has an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Hood River that is several years old, whereby the city has agreed if the port says there's a port ordinance violation and identifies it as an ordinance violation, and they contact the city police, that the city police will get involved and enforce the port's ordinance. And under the terms of that IGA, the port is charged a certain amount, although Michael's talked to the chief and the chief says we probably wouldn't charge you. So there is an agreement with the city and the city police department.
Okay, thank you.
So this may be coming back to you in some form, probably more likely in the springtime before the summer starts. Last one we talked about before, I really don't need to go into it unless you want me to, but it's just that continuing tension between how much we need to either reserve or contribute to keep the bridge safe and operational versus the potential that the bridge will be replaced. And as I said earlier, it's an annual thought process. It's an annual update to the capital maintenance plan. And there's a lot of assumptions built into it, but we always have to be mindful of the fact that there may be progress on bridge replacement, but by my estimate, the most optimum schedule is 2027 for a new bridge. And you can't have a new bridge. Well, we have to keep the current bridge going. So you'll see that again as we get into the budget preparation. And we'll update the capital plan and we'll assess and make recommendations for budget authority for the next fiscal year. And I will say, I guess, add that the underwater concrete piers were my biggest fear, and all of us really concerned about what we're seeing there. We got some real comfort with Kaufman's review of that. The second biggest concern is the concrete approach ramps. We have HDR's assessment. Kaufman is now looking at those test results and we'll get their opinion. It's a smaller dollar impact project or projects, but a really significant challenge to do any kind of construction work that close to the ends of the bridges. The traffic impacts are enormous. And so it would less of a financial hit, but more of a local transportation impact. So unless there are questions, those are the ones that didn't quite make the cut for an hour-long discussion. But that would conclude all of the items that we had on our agenda.
That would put us 12 minutes ahead of schedule.
12 minutes. Well, I just say, I didn't say it at the beginning of the meeting, but this is my favorite meeting of the year. I just enjoy the chance to hear from commissioners and look down over the horizon a bit and look at longer term policy and project matters. And this was fun. And I think the Zoom format worked really well. A lot of staff put in a lot of hard work getting ready for this. And boy, Genevieve is a genius at managing documents and shared screen, and remarkable. So when we do our succession planning, keep that in mind. How do you replace that? I don't know. Maybe a commission, maybe Jerry can help out in the. Sorry, that's
yeah, maybe.
Hey, Michael, I have one question for Fred. Fred, how are we doing with PERS?
What do you mean with regard to PERS?
I mean, is PERS going to be an issue for us with the lower revenue rate we're anticipating?
Not really.
Okay.
The new rates that come out aren't that will affect next year. Really aren't that for us, for the Port of Hood River, aren't that much of an increase.
Okay, just want to make sure, stay on top of it. Thanks, Fred.
All right.
Can I just clarify, that's an ongoing dig with Jerry, because if there's with all due respect, if there's anyone that has less capability in terms of IT, it's me. And Gary might be next on the list, but
Wonder how we could set you up for a head-to-head competition.
no, I think I
We should have a test.
Like golf, low score. All right, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to say? In that
Sorry,
case, we're-
we didn't do lunch for you guys this year, but we did enjoy lunch, staff lunch before the meeting, so that put us all in a great mood.
the little nostalgia.
Yeah.
Did you guys get to just talk about each of us individually? And
No, we were all eating separately. We have most of our meetings in the building just like this via Zoom. I mean, physically we're 30 feet away from each other, but we'll meet by Zoom. So we're all in the same building, but we're not in our shared workspace very often, even at lunch. But
I think we should all give a shout out to David's grandkid right there.
yeah.
We should all do a big wave for him.
Dash, hi Dash. Hi, buddy.
Hey, Dash.
there's Dash. Hey, Dash.
Wait back.
So if you'll,
I don't like him much.
if you'll adjourn us, John, I can stop the live stream.
Okay, we're